Start with what Charles Darwin knew about. He knew about the fossil record. Now, if you look at the oldest rocks, the earliest life on Earth was single-celled. About 520 million years ago, rocks of that age, you start to see fish and clams and other multi-celled sea life. Then another 100 million years or so later, you start to see plants and then amphibians and then reptiles on land. And if you look at sequences, what you see is there's a life form. If you look, if you find a fossil of a certain life form, if you look at later times, you see similar life forms that get progressively different and closer to modern life forms. And if you look backwards in time, you see progressively different life forms that look less and less like modern life forms. So that tells you that there's a change, but that tells you that species have arisen and fallen and, arisen and gotten extinct. And usually species look kind of like species earlier than them and later than them and less like ones further back and further forward in time. But that doesn't tell you how those things happened. And there's more evidence such as the geographic distribution of species. This is something Charles Darwin noticed. If you've got an island with a bunch of birds, it might be that there's 15 different ecological niches, seed eaters and insect eaters and nut eaters and fruit eaters, all filled by slightly different species of finches, in the case that Darwin noticed on the Galapagos Islands. Now, in South America, the largest landmass of the Galapagos Islands, there is many species of birds. There are finches, but there are many other species of birds that fill all those different ecological niches. But there on the Galapagos Islands, all those different ecological niches are filled by finches. Why would that be? Well, Darwin hypothesized that the first birds to arrive at the Galapagos were finches, and then they adapted to fill all these different ecological niches. So there you had one species turning into 15 differently related species, and that got Darwin thinking, maybe we can put all this together. Maybe what happens is one species in an environment, if there's different ecological niches, can evolve into several species, and then over time the changes accumulate and you get gradually more and more different species. So maybe all plants and animals are related by common ancestry, and this process of adapting to a new environment through mutation and reproductive success, maybe that explains the data that we see in the fossil record. There's a few other pieces of evidence Darwin had, but what's really interesting is, since Darwin's time, we found new evidence which strongly supports Darwin's hypothesis, evidence Darwin didn't know about, but we've discovered it and it actually supports the theory of evolution. The most easiest to understand and the most convincing is the genetic evidence. You probably know that a scientist can take your DNA and the DNA of your brothers and sisters and do a comparison and see that you share the same parents. Well, they can do similar kinds of tests with dogs and wolves and coyotes and see really strong evidence that they share an ancestor a couple of million years ago. And then they can take dogs and cats and other mammals and see really strong evidence that they share a common ancestor about 100 million years ago. And so this evidence from genetics, which has been discovered just in the last few decades, has turned out to really strongly support Darwin's theory of evolution.